Hi, Yorkville High School. My name is Michelle Fumagalli. I am a registered dietitian, owner of Fit Plate Nutrition, which is a private practice. I'm from Naperville, Illinois, so not too far from all of you, but jumping on here to give you a some ideas to answer your questions pretty much on nutrition. So as a registered dietitian, we'll kind of go on this, but I'm a nutrition expert. Dietetics was actually my second degree. My first was marketing. And then I worked for Gatorade for 3.5 years and fell in love with sports nutrition. I have an athletic background and really just nutrition and how it can benefit, how important it is to nourish our bodies and right, we're not plants. We need fuel, we need energy, and how food can affect how we feel, how our body works, how we sleep, our energy, all these things. So I'm going to jump into some questions. So the first question is eating unhealthy once in a while okay if you're trying to stick to a diet? So a big part of what I believe in too is I'm not a huge fan of diets. So and really, I'm just not or diet culture. So let's kind of go into what diet culture is. So diet culture is something that tells us we need to eat a certain way, we need to look a certain way. It puts a certain way of eating and a certain appearance kind of on a pedestal. And it makes us think we have to look like that in order to be successful, in order to be healthy. And I think this can be very misinterpreted. If you guys know what the BMI is, normal, obese, overweight. There's many people who are overweight or even in the obese. Like that doesn't mean they're unhealthy. And we have this weight stigma saying if we're overweight or obese BMI that we are unhealthy, that they're that person is lazy, that it's their fault, and a lot of other things come in. So diet culture is when you see all natural, low fat. Marketing does this all the time to have us try to buy products. So diet cultures in magazines and social media, in influencers, in your friends, in your family, all the different diets that are going on, that really diets majority of the time will just cause you to regain weight at some point, especially because diets are usually short-term, unrealistic, restrictive, and things like that. So my big thing is to help people look at their nourishment scale and know, what foods are nourishing for their body. What's nourishing for you might not be nourishing for your friend. Some people do better on higher carb diets or higher fat diets, but that's kind of the big question. So to answer the question, is eating unhealthy once in a while? I want people to not see food as good and bad. I want them to see as nourishing, and that nourishing scale where there's some really nourishing food and there's some not so nourishing food. So eating healthy once in a while, absolutely, or eating not as nourishing foods every once in a while because we love them, because food is one of the greatest pleasures in our world. Absolutely, right? But it's still trying to have that self-respect in mind when we are nourishing ourselves, right? And knowing that certain foods, like if we had a pint of ice cream, we're not going to feel really good. And knowing like we don't need to have that whole pint. We could have just 1 cup or half a cup and really enjoy it. And we're still eating the food that we really love. Right? If that makes sense. So the majority of the time we want to eat nourishing foods. So we want to make sure we have protein. We want to make sure we have color like a veggie and fruits, nuts, seeds, beans, whole grains, dairy is things like that. So we'll go into that more, but we want that nourishing food majority of the time. If you want to call it 80-20, 90-10, whatever, but we also really want to enjoy the food that that maybe is not as nourishing as well. Okay, so what is the one best piece of nutritional advice you can give? And I've kind of already chatted about this, but Really, it's looking at the whole picture, right? It's you're nourishing yourself out of self-care. You don't see foods good or bad. You don't see foods that are off limit. It's trying to fuel and nourish yourself, so you can be your best. Sleep well, focus in school, have energy, on and off the field, whether you're an athlete or not. Um, so all these things. So I would say, having that healthy relationship with food is really important. And then uh, you know and my other thing is always eat more vegetables and fruit, because they're so good for us, and we do not get enough of them. What is healthy and what is not healthy for a 15-year-old when it comes to working out and eating right? So again, we have this healthy, we have this not healthy. And really quick, the thing that I want to get into with the good and bad, right? We're taught at a young age, if we do something bad, that we should feel guilty. So if that means you eat a bad food or an unhealthy food, do you feel guilty? Right? So that's kind of why I don't like those terms, and that's why I always say nourishing versus not as nourishing, but things like that. So going back to this, what is healthy and what is not healthy. So and what is healthy? Yes. The less ingredients, usually the healthier it is. Whole real foods, are very, going to be more healthy than more processed foods usually, or let's say more nourishing. So if that kind of makes sense, as an athlete, we need to be eating more carbohydrates. So if you have a plate, a perfect plate, which we don't live in a perfect world, but it can stem from, let's say, like broken into thirds. Like for me, a perfect plate would be, because I'm not as active as an athlete, let's say half of my plate would be veggies and some fruit, a fourth of it would be protein, and a fourth of it would be starch, whole grain. Now, for athletes, maybe that's broken into thirds. That makes sense. And if you're having a really hard game day, then you have more carbs, more starches, because that's your main energy source. So our plate can change from visual standpoint in those three areas. Why should I worry about my calorie intake? Um, you sh- we should worry about how much food we're eating, because if we're eating in excess, our body won't be able to use all that energy that we're giving it, and it'll just store it, right? So a big part of this is just listening to our hunger and our fullness cues, which is what we did when we were kids before our parents told us to eat everything on the plate. Um, so it's just becoming more of an intuitive eater, which you're becoming more aware of when you're hungry. We're going to eat. Diet culture tells us to suppress our hunger much of the time, but if we're hungry, let's eat, and let's make it nourishing. And then let's be present while we eat, and let's enjoy the food. And then we'll know when we're satisfied, and then we can stop. We've all got to that super fullness and it's very uncomfortable. We don't need to get there. And if we get to fullness and then being uncomfortable when we're full many times, we're going beyond the energy our body needs, right? What should you do if it's hard to always have healthy meals to eat? um, Plan ahead, kind of see what you have, and maybe have things on hand, like make a grocery list and have different protein sources, different color sources, and different starch sources that you can just kind of pull from, if that makes sense, right? So I would say it's just thinking and planning ahead with that, and having your kitchen, your house more set up with healthy foods. What should you do? Is soda as bad for you as the media makes it seem? Like, soda is definitely not as nourishing. It's a liquid. So it's somewhat, if you've heard like kind of empty calories, it's really just sugar. And if you really like it, we talked about that, like enjoy it when you have it. Maybe get a smaller can. If you're doing it 5 days a week, maybe we put it down to 3 and then put it down to 2, right? But if you really like soda, it's not nourishing, but not very nourishing for you. So it's having that, wanting to nourish yourself as best as possible and have it. Don't feel bad about having it, but having it less often, and trying to drink more lower calorie beverages. Does eating fewer calories each day hurt your metabolism if you're trying to lose weight? If you do it in a very restrictive way, which it usually is done that way, if anyone's eating 1,200 or 1,500 calories, that is way too low. Especially for growing teenagers, especially if you're athletes. So, 1,800 and above is usually, but high school and, usually over 2,000, even 2,400, like you need usually more than what you think. And if you're an athlete, even more than that. So if you should be having around 2,000 calories a day and you're only having 1,500, or having 1,200, is way too low. And yes, that will hit your metabolism, because think about it, our body's really smart. If we're not giving it the energy that it needs, okay, the food that it needs, it's going to slow down and hold on to reserves, because it doesn't think it's going to be fed that food, right? It doesn't know that there's food everywhere around us. Think back to our ancestors when food wasn't everywhere, right? So our body's really smart. Our body does not know that we have ample food everywhere. Is it okay to eat more than 3 meals per day? 100%. If you are hungry, let's eat something. Maybe, and maybe you have it at different times, right? Like maybe you have 5 smaller meals in a day, and every day can change. Maybe you have 2 meals and like 3 snacks. There's no right or wrong. It really depends on your schedule, how hungry you are, things like that. And your hunger can change every day too. How do I push myself away from junk food? If you restrict yourself, you're just going to want it. Just like if your parents tell you you can't do something, you just want to do that thing and rebel. So I would say give yourself unconditional permission to have it. But then think like, if I eat all this junk food, I'm not going to feel good. That's not how you take care of your body, right? We have one body. This is our only home that we'll have. So we want to take care of it. So I would say, think of it as like, just ask yourself, like, do I really want this right now? And come at it from a self-care standpoint. Like, it's just kind of having that awareness. What are some cheap sources of healthy food? So I wrote this down, like we can do beans, rice, oats. Aldi has really good produce and it's lower. Frozen produce lasts for a really long time. Canned tuna, eggs, milk, chicken breast, cottage cheese, yogurt, fruits and vegetables that are in season. Hopefully that can help you and give some ideas. And a lot of those were color, protein, and starches. Best foods that provide healthy fats. So, so how much, there's plants and then animal proteins, right? And there's fat in both of those. So if you have like nuts and seeds, olive oil, soybeans, tofu, fatty fish, like those are unsaturated. So those are technically like the healthier fats, but we still need saturated fat, and that would be in your animal proteins and full fat dairy, red meat, chicken skin, butter, lard, coconut oil. Those are more saturated. So, we want to have more unsaturated, but we can still absolutely have saturated, and we can still have red meat, still have chicken, especially if it's a fourth of our plate, which we talked about earlier. The not as nourishing, not so healthy fat would be the trans fat, and that's in very processed foods and baked goods and chips and things like that. Can leading an unhealthy eating, drinking lifestyle cause permanent problems or body damage? Yes, absolutely. And this can be from eating too much or eating too little, if that makes sense, right? So our body wants balance. If you guys have heard this, like we want homeostasis, like that's what our body fights for. So, eating, balancing our blood sugar levels. So not just eating sugar, right? We have protein, we have whole real foods, we have fiber. So that all helps balance our blood sugar levels. And that's what we want. And that's part of being healthy. We want balance in fluids. So that's why hydration is so important. We want to have water. Water makes up more than 60% of our body. So, hydration, and our kidneys work really hard to have balance in our hydration. So we just need to give it ample water and ample fluids to have that hydration, right? And then Um, and then we talked about the overall amount of calories, right? It wants balance. So that's why we want to, like, let's just think about how hungry we are, and then we eat until we're satisfied and we're done. Sometimes eating is a business. I totally get it, because sometimes we're not hungry, but we need to eat. So that's kind of like practical hunger versus physical. But if that makes sense, it can absolutely do damage, especially over time, not only physically, but mentally. Are sugar-free and artificial sugar options healthier? I would say no. It's like, eat a real cookie and enjoy it. Because sometimes the artificial sweeteners are so sweet, our body doesn't even know what to do with it or process it, and it processes it like sugar. So that's why I would say, like, eat, like, if you really like soda, like, drink a small soda. Don't do it as often. Like, don't think that you can do it more, or you can have more of it because it's sugar-free or artificial sugar, right? It's just like, why not just do the real thing and then really enjoy it? It's going to be better anyways, and have less of it. Are there any significant benefits to being a vegan or vegetarian? There can be, absolutely, but there can also not be. Um, just because you're a vegetarian doesn't mean that you're healthy. You could eat a lot of foods that are not as nourishing and still be a vegetarian. So, but if you're being a vegetarian and you're adding in a lot more veggies and fruits and nuts and seeds and, whole grains and like fibrous foods, those are great. Like, those are super good for you, but you can do that when you're not a vegetarian too. We talked about that plate, only 1/4 of it is protein. That's really not that much, right? How big a difference is there nutritional? How big of a difference is there nutritionally between organic and not organic foods? Okay, so it's important to know organic is the process of the product itself. So it can be organic or it can be conventional. So and will produce, and it's either way, it'll still produce a nutritious product. So to be termed organic, it takes more work on dairy farmers or the farmer in general, and thus it's more expensive. So that's, really the main reason why. There's different things that they have to do, like for dairy cows, they have to have an excess pasture grazing 120 days a year. However, they could be in a field, there could be no grass there, right? But they're just like walking around. So that's still the iffy part. And it's not saying that if you're buying like non-organic dairy, that the conventional is like adding all these antibiotics or hormones to or to fruits and vegetables. That doesn't mean that. Like, it's very strict. The FDA, it's very safe, dairy and meat, and if they're not organic, super safe. So, it's going to be safe and nutritious no matter what, organic versus conventional. So I do not buy organic food because it's very expensive, and it's not that different. GMOs, they don't see anything wrong with GMOs with any of the studies. So it's more of a privilege if you can have organic, because it's more expensive if you want it. But it's definitely just a personal choice. Losing or gaining weight. These are the questions on losing or gaining weight, gaining muscle. When trying to gain weight and muscle, what would you recommend for eating? So if we're trying to gain weight, we're trying to gain muscle, we're in a building phase. So we definitely need more protein. We need to be lifting weights if we're trying to gain weight too. And so we would need more protein. We would need more calories, more energy, aka like more snacks or bigger meals. So we eat more often, more protein, more snacks, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, smoothies, like loaded smoothies. We're increasing the carbs and protein at meals. I would say protein would be like 0.8 per pound of body weight, usually if we want to gain weight. But all these can be beneficial to you with that, if that makes sense. So I would say, bigger meals, bigger snacks, and still trying to get those like nourishing foods in. But again, like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, great way, loaded with smoothies, things like that. Are there ways to target weight loss in a specific part of your body? No. Does BMI actually determine if you are healthy or not? We kind of went over this already. That would be a no. So someone who's normal weight, that you just see how they look. You have, it's such a weight stigma, and we live in such a fat phobic world, which is very upsetting. We're really trying to change that, where like, I don't even care, any of my clients, I don't care what their BMI is. I really have, I'm doesn't matter to me at all. I don't even care about their weight loss. That's from my standpoint, because what I care about is how they're nourishing themselves and how they feel, and having stuff that's like not weight focused. So, how are your clothes fitting? How's your energy? How's your digestion? How's your cognition and focus? How's your sleep? Like all these different aspects, that are not weight related, if that makes sense. So BMI is really just an like I'm overweight in BMI, and I'm a very healthy individual, and I eat very healthy, and I work out a lot. I'm overweight because I have more muscle. But again, people who are in overweight or even obese, like that does not mean they're unhealthy. It's just, weight doesn't mean health. I would say there's different body frames, there's different genetics, different body types. And that's why I can't stress enough of like my dislike towards BMI. What is the best, safest way to gain weight while staying healthy? And someone gave, but like through food. I do not recommend supplements to high school athletes. I don't. You shouldn't be having a pre-workout. We can do food. If you are hydrating yourself and fueling yourself from when you wake up to when you go to bed, we shouldn't need a pre-workout. And we shouldn't really need a post-workout. Like we can do chocolate milk, or if we do a protein shake after, it should be NSF certified, which is a third-party tested, and NSF certified. That's what the pros have to use. MLB has to use it. Olympics have to use it because it's third-party tested. And all the other supplement companies are not FDA regulated, and we don't know what's in them. So if you are doing a supplement, make sure it is N as in Nancy, S as in Sam, F as in Frank certified. And I highly recommend that. Gatorade products are actually FDA regulated. They're a food company, not a supplement company. So if that makes sense. So always through food and doing it, just again, like adding in a snack or adding in, having a bigger meal or something like that. Is it normal, recommended to change your type of meals based on your athletic season? If you're a football player versus a track athlete. Yeah, I think it depends on like how active you are. And if, listening to your hunger levels, but even, endurance athletes versus let's call it, like football or something like with sprints in it, we still need similar foods and similar plates. So not too much. I would say like more season being like off season versus in season and versus preseason, those things more change. So if you're in the off season, you're not being as active, then yeah, you need more vegetables and fruits. If you're in season, you're going to need more starchy carbs because your energy levels are greater. Best piece of nutrition advice you can give. I think we've kind of answered this, but eat more color. And then, just listen to your body and know your hunger and fullness. And really a huge nutrition advice is there's so much information out there. We have access because of internet to influencers who don't know anything about nutrition, but tell you guys of what to eat and drink and supplements to use. So I would say be knowledgeable consumers. Do not believe everything you hear, everything you read when it comes to nutrition. There's tons of studies that come in, and people will nitpick what they hear to say what they want you to do, if that makes sense. So be smart. Do not be naive when it comes to nutrition research and information. Look at the studies. Your friend tells you something, do not believe it until you see proof in that. But that will set you up for a very much more healthier future, because there's always new studies showing, are the studies on humans or are they on animals? How big is the study? Like what did they find? Like how significant were the findings? So it's really important to actually look at the study and get proof for what you read, and know the source. And if it's credible, is it a dietitian? Is it a nutritionist? Which is not a dietitian. Nutritionist is more like a tutor versus a dietitian would be like a teacher. But that would be a really big piece. So supplements. Is creatine a good option for gaining muscle mass? For certain sports, yes. If you're in, creatine is one of the best actually studied supplements that are very helpful. And if it's very like high intensity workouts, that is very effective for it. Creatine can be produced by the body. It's hard to get all the creatine in. You would need, your body produces like 1 to 2 grams per day. As for the creatine content of meat and fish, which is pretty much where you can get it, you need to consume about 1 pound to get for 1 to 2 grams of creatine, if that makes sense. So those who train with explosive power, strength, are primarily relying on like 30-second sprints, or training at high intensities, and utilizes weight training can benefit from creatine supplement. You can have 3 to 5 grams a day. You can split it up like in 2 different dosage. But again, if you do this, it needs to be NSF certified. So make sure it's NSF certified. Let's see. Is it good to consume a lot of supplements and pre-workout? No. Again, you guys are growing. We should get everything through food as much as possible. Again, creatine is one of those things where if you're trying to gain muscle mass, that can definitely help you with your strength. And it's legal, and we can get NSF certified products with that. Protein shakes maybe after practice. If you're not going to go eat, use it as a convenience. We're going to go home and eat, then that's something different. You can put it into smoothies as well, making sure it's NSF certified. Pre-workouts, I really don't like. Caffeine is one natural, one that you could have like a cup of coffee that shows benefits. There's tons of different like foods that you can do, but with the beta alanine in pre-workouts, I really don't like, not a huge fan. And if you do get one and you really like it, like make sure it's NSF certified as well. All right, so we have 2 more questions. What kind of jobs can, and I just want to say like with pre-workout, there's like, when I was training, I went to the CrossFit Games in 2018. And when I was training for that, I was working out 2.5, 3 hours a day, like 2-a-days. So I was putting my body to the absolute max. So yes, I was using a pre-workout, sometimes, maybe like once a day. But the bigger piece of the puzzle, like I want you guys to think the bigger picture is how am I feeling myself the whole day? What I do right before the workout is not going to matter if I ate unnourishing foods, didn't hydrate, didn't sleep, right? So it's looking at that bigger picture and not relying on supplements because they really won't do very much for you. So what kind of jobs can a dietitian get? So a dietitian, we go to college and bachelor's of science, concentration dietetics. And then we have a 1,200-hour internship that we need. We're also going to have to, dietitians are going to have to get their master's degree by 2024. But you can get your master's in anything. But really, dietitians can be in a hospital setting, a clinical setting, a food service setting. They can be in university, a professor. They can be a private practice like I am. They can be a sports dietitian and work in college and pro. Let's see, they can be a writer and work for PR firms. They can work for wellness companies. They can do corporate wellness. So really, anything where a nutrition expert is needed. Of course, like in clinical, you can work in any type of specialty, cardio, diabetes, in the hospital, outpatient with cancer, peds, eating disorders, disordered eating, anything like that. So there's tons of different areas that dietitians can work. I worked in an outpatient cancer center prior. You can work with brands prior to going full-time with my private practice. What made you decide to become a dietitian? So I played soccer at Notre Dame. I played pro in Germany and in the United States. And during that time, my nutrition was not good, not optimal. I think about how much better I could be as an athlete if I would have fueled my body properly, and how much my performance would have excelled. But can't go back. So when I started working for Gatorade in marketing and sales, I worked with dietitians and I learned the science behind sports nutrition. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, how do I not know this? Like, how is this such a benefit? This is such a competitive advantage. I was doing it wrong the whole time. So I started implementing those things. I started doing CrossFit. I told you I was in the CrossFit Games 2018, and I started CrossFit in 2011, 12. And then so I got to implement those things and see the benefits of my body, of my performance, of how I felt, my sleep, and all those things. And then this passion for nutrition came to be, and I went back to school to be a dietitian. So I knew I wanted to help people through food and nutrition. And that's what I currently do. So, so my private practice, Fit Plate Nutrition, I work with youth athletes. I work with a lot of female youth athletes as well. And then I also work with, adult women, helping them improve their nourishment, improve their relationship with food, relationship with their body, and overall that bigger picture. So that, I believe, is all the questions. If you guys have any more, let me know. I will put my information in the video, but thank you for all of your questions. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And if you ever need me, my Instagram is at Fumagalli, FUMAGALLI _fitplate, fitplatenutrition.com. And then my Twitter handle is RD Fumagalli. So hope you guys all have a great day, and thanks so much.